Um, Good morning. My name is Reverend Lynn Bolden. I'm part of a group of working with um, the collaboration between McMaster, Ken Child, and uh, the Kids Brain Health Network. We're looking at ways that we can fix the disconnect between um, research that's appropriate and necessary for the Black community, specifically the population of Black community members who are raising Down syndrome children and adults. Okay. As a background, the three of us, Dr. Joan JCN and Sharice Johnson, have come up with a background design that we hope will rapidly, quickly allow the disconnected parts to come together. Preliminary data suggests that children with Down syndrome in the Black community have a lower median age and life expectancy and are at greater risk for certain diagnoses. The limited participation of children and adults with Down syndrome from the Black community in studies to date has been caused by, we suspect, some historical abuses. There were issues around eugenics, which affected this population heavily. And this was practiced throughout the United States and parts of Canada. There were issues around the undue and coercive pressure on pregnant women who had been diagnosed with Down syndrome babies in utero to abort. And that caused a severe problem with getting this population back into research and into clinical care. Researchers have also had limited access to this population. For example, it was not known among our researcher teams how to use the epidemiological data to locate individuals with Down syndrome from the Black community. There was a potential lack of awareness of the local resources that serve these populations throughout the community. And there is a regional dispersion of individuals with Down syndrome in the Black community, but yet there are organizations that bring them together with other Down syndrome families that could be utilized to make contact. Funding decisions have not always supported relevant clinical research for individuals with Down syndrome from the Black community. So we get, a lot of clinical trials for medications, but not addressing the real concerns that parents have as they're raising these children and as these children begin to age into adulthood. Next, we will hear from one of our principal providers a little bit more about the process that we used.
So thank you, Reverend Lynn. And based on that background, we wanted to come up with a way to start to explore this and really start to repair this disconnect. And so Reverend Lynn introduced us to needs assessments, which the reason why we chose to utilize this is that it is an established group process of gathering information and prioritizing this information to develop solutions. And this has been utilized by Reverend Lynn and her community with many examples of success, designing house complexes, establishing employment. It's efficient, it's economical, it's low burden, and has been proven to be revealing. What is it, you may ask? It's a group process with, importantly, rank ordering of top considerations. It's a way to inform a community efficiently, and really to, again, provide consensus and also the goal of identifying solutions. The other really wonderful aspect of this is that the goal is to provide an environment that's conducive to discussion. to have parents of children with Down syndrome from the Black community, ideally to feel uh, supported in the discussion, as well as researchers. And what this means for our overall question is that utilizing this needs assessment, our goal is that we can begin to use this method to open up research that is relevant and appropriate for this population. The next we'll do in this next aim is talk about the role play that we developed in developing this project tool, and practicing questions that we think will be relevant for parents to ask other parents. And then we ranked these answers, and this is just a small snippet examples that we came up with. The one question is, what behaviors would have allowed for engagement in research? And the parent that answered these questions, and our ranking of them, we're providing these examples, is the faith community to support their decision making and the family to support their decision making. And so this demonstrates how for individuals from the Black community, that making sure that we consider that their faith community and their family are a part of discussions about research. Another question that we identified, what have been barriers for potential engagement in investigative trials? And so the parent that answered this question shared that her children were not able to participate based on the exclusion criteria. However, the concern is that a no to parents from the Black community may mean a no and a disengagement kind of forever, and that this concept may need to be explored more and taken into consideration for clinical trials.
Name 3, we looked at the role play between the parent to researcher questions and rankings. Preparing for the needs assessment, this was a part of that. So as we started, we looked at what point do you consider funding support for study design? Could you design it, then you look for funding? Another point was, to what degree do you think parent involvement in research is compromised or supported by funders? Also, should demographics be a factor in recruitment in potential participants? And finally, how to address parent biases about clinical trials. Underneath that, we looked at probing, and one of the things in probing was, do you think the patient population reflects the general population? Do you think the individuals reflect racial, ethnic, rural, or social economic diversity? Also, do you number of individuals with Down syndrome from the Black community live in North Carolina? Where do they live, and what community supports do they access?
We'd like to conclude with some of the observations that we made as a result of these questions. Understand that this was a very small sample size. We'd like to see the sample size enlarged for parents participating in the needs assessment and for researchers participating in the needs assessment. But we were able to affirm that there is indeed a disconnect between families of children with Down syndrome from the Black community, a lack of relevant research ongoing, and the lack of multidisciplinary agencies being involved in the research. This leads to an isolation, not only of the families, but it leads to an isolation of researchers from the Black community in general, and a concern that funders have more input into clinical design than may be ethically appropriate. We felt as the group that all of these indicators can be ameliorated fairly easily and quickly by coming together around problem solving, which may be a later iteration of this needs assessment process. In addition to that, we'd like to say that one of the interesting findings that we had was a strong interest among families living with people with Down syndrome to reverse the model and to begin to solicit funding on their own for relevant research that they feel would be important for their families, and then to contract with researchers to actually develop the requirements according to their prerequisites. This would allow families of children with Down syndrome and adults with Down syndrome to actually begin to direct what research would be done with their family members. We hope you found this interesting. We certainly did. We are also excited and energized to see our ideas go forward in this simple interactive model. Thank you very much.